I'm defying. Hard labor, I came here to modify the system. Take them down if they ain't listening. Straight demolition. From young, everything resistant. Good times I don't really miss them. Gotta pay the cost, no tick. Wick, this hard labor and I'm kicked. Never fit in with the crowd or got into politics. You can tell I'm built different. Trust me, it'll be a sequence of events if you touch me. Even when the women do it love. I've been eye to eye with great people, but you'll be mistaken if you put another one above.
Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny. It's the most hardcore news show on earth. I am your host of that show, Conrad Rogas. It's noon on Sunday, May 19th, 2024. So we got episode 76. This one's going to be something about the deterioration of the quality of products and services. Also, these minor aggravations and frustrations of daily life. These are seemingly unrelated things that nobody thinks are done intentionally, that are done intentionally on a societal level, the whole society. So it's a bit of an ambitious one, right? Because first I'm gonna rant about all the things that I've noticed over this week and the last few weeks that have led to this episode, and then I'm gonna prove it, right? I'm gonna prove it. That's what I do on this show. I make radical claims about things, right? I talk about all the most sensitive topics, but then I substantiate the claims and I prove this stuff. You know, this is not just a ranting show. It's not a complaining show, but it's ambitious because these are things that a lot of people will just think you're wild, you're crazy, and you're connecting dots that aren't really there. But I'm going to try to keep that streak going, and really this is a much longer project. It can't be put together in a few hours of research and a few hours of prep, but that's essentially what it is. And put it into a 45-minute show, but I'm going to attempt to do that. Because that's kind of what I preach, right? So I got to practice what I preach, and to do something good in the world requires that you just go for it, right? You take on a project that you know is going to be hard, and you know you're going to fail at some portions, right? You know you're going to come up short, okay? I've only talked for 2 minutes. I've already come up short on things. I could have done it better. You're never going to be perfect, right? But it's time for regular people to start endeavoring to do better, right? To be better at what they do. So I'm going to take my own advice. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and do exactly that. So beginning, I'm just going to rattle off all this stuff. I'm going to get it off my chest of what I'm seeing out here. Number one is road work taking forever. Construction on the highways taking forever. I'm here in Chicago driving to the city every day. And the 90 and the 94, it takes twice as long to get to work, to get home. Every day it is crazy. It is bumper to bumper traffic. And the 294 as well. It seems like all the roads, all the highways, including regular roads, they seem to be under construction. And obviously it could be done faster. This could be done. If you wanted to get it done, you can get it done. This is a pipeline. This is an artery of infrastructure. This is like the lifeline, right? The blood vessels of the body that is, our functioning society. But you don't treat it like that, right? You treat it like you just put it on the back burner, right? This is like at the hospital. You put the people on a waiting list for like 6 months to a year to 3 years, the way they do in other countries like Poland. See, we don't have that in the United States. In the United States, you can go to the hospital, you get some health care right then and there. But not to get off topic, it could be done faster. You could have 2 crews working. You could have one during the day and one during the night, and do it twice as fast. But of course they won't do that because it's all union, right? It's all union crews. And if it wasn't for the workers' unions, workers' unions are blatantly Marxist, by the way, right? Workers unite. Who used to say that? And the union leaders they reap all the benefits of the sacrifice of who? The workers, right? So it's for the working man, but you're exploiting the working man just like you say the capitalists are exploiting the working man. Because the people who benefit in all these strikes are the union leaders. It's never the people who actually lost time. They actually lost pay, and in the end, it's not the common man that wins, right? It's the pressure groups that win. It's the elitists that win. So of course, they won't do that with these roads. The most important thing, the thing to get done right away, they don't do that. drag their heels on it. And I'm not saying it's easy to just fix a whole, interstate highway, right, in 2 months. I get that. But sometimes you'll drive by, you see the pace at which they're working, and look, and these people, they have no interest in trying hard. And that's the whole thing about Marxism, is you create a condition where you don't incentivize people to work hard and do things well and do things fast. Whereas if they didn't have a set salary, if they were paid by the completion of the job, they would do it very fast. And that's what they should do. They should hire contractors to build these things, to fix these roads, the way you do if a pipe bursts in your house, and that's why your shit gets done fast. Now, back to the unions. I'm all for uniting and demanding rightful pay and good conditions, but in a way where each individual negotiates with the employer directly. You don't hold a market hostage, which is a lot of these strikes. That's what they do. You don't do that. You're supposed to set your terms and tell the boss, take it or leave it. And that's the world I live in. That's what I did. I negotiated my terms with my employer, myself. And then when I was offered better terms, right, and more money, I changed employers. And now the employer that I work for now, he has a young, capable, driven worker. And he's the one that pays better and has better working conditions. That's free market. Fuck a trade union to be the middleman for your work and effort. Why don't you do it yourself? You're the one who puts food on the table anyway. What is so crazy about negotiating that you won't do it? Why do we have to have all these agents and all these lawyers, right? You do all the hard work, but when it comes to actually cutting a piece of the pie for you, then you give your authority, you give your agency to another person to be your agent for you. I don't live in a world of agents. So that's road work. I could get lost in that. I wanted to get that out of the way early because it's going to turn into a construction episode. Another thing, you go to the store and you go to measure something. You go to put on some sunglasses because you're buying sunglasses. They put the theft lock right on the nose. So you can't look in the mirror and look good and feel good. You have to look in the mirror and look like a damn idiot. Because people are stealing all this stuff, and you got retail theft all going wild, right? And I don't blame the store or the company. I blame the thieves that are committing the actual violations, right? So, look, I used to steal too, so I know how it goes. And my solution is theft should be a lot less tolerated. It should not be like a common offense. It should be tolerated or it should be treated very severely. You can't have people stealing stuff. Just because it's a $5 piece of sunglasses, that's not the point. The point is where you bring force into an establishment that took a lot of work, you're supposed to really feel some pain for that. Not a slap on the wrist. That's some real damage. Because it's not just about the $5 sunglasses. It's about you putting that man's entire establishment, his entire family in jeopardy, in question, and we should not just tolerate a common low life messing things up for people who have dedicated lifelong put a life's worth of effort to build something substantial. But because of that, it's all being tolerated. People get out with a slap on the wrist. And look, I'm not for prisons or harsh penalties or locking people up for drug offenses, because that's what people say. That conservatives say that. I don't say that. I'm saying give people the right that when they can hire a security guard, or they can have somebody stand there, and when somebody steals from a store like that, you should be able to shoot them or put their life really in question. And people don't like that. They think I'm crazy for that. I think it's crazy to blatantly tolerate people who just shit on everything, shit on people's hard effort. That's my opinion. I think if I was punished severely by the people whose property I was stealing, I would have changed much more quickly. Okay, so I don't make excuses for people like that. Those people need to change quick. And I'm lucky that I did change in time, right? People go their whole lives just disrespecting private property, personal property. That's the problem. And who pays for all this? It's not the thief that pays for all this, because whether you lock him up or not, he's still a lowlife. He's still a lowlife anyway. Who pays is all of us, all the people who put on the piece of sunglasses and look at them in the mirror and look stupid. They have to stoop to the level of the lowlife. And that's what the masks did. It's demoralization. It's the entire society paying the price for some kind of collective guilt. Masks should be used when working with open wounds or hazardous chemicals. Outside of those two settings, you look like a clown if you're wearing a mask. A man whose mouth is covered is a coward. It gives off the energy of impotence, actually. Your mouth as a man is the symbol of your potential, of your potency, your power. Right? So if you're wearing a mask as a man, you're impotent, you're a cuck. That's what it is. And then a woman whose mouth is covered, that's just about the biggest tragedy in the universe. Because I don't know, the woman is a creature who breathes life into this world through her speech. So I don't know what the rest of these dudes think, but I like my women to say what they're thinking, to say what they want. Fuck who doesn't like it. Okay? I'm not always gonna like it, but there's no limit of what you can say with me or like things that I don't want a woman to say. That's real. I don't live in that world. So, and if you're a truly secure man, you're not worried about what your wife or daughter says, let alone a random woman, right? And I don't mean that you don't care, that you don't value her opinion. I'm just saying that you can handle it. If somebody that you're with says something dumb, she's the one who looks dumb, not you. You should be able to handle your shit, and live your life in a way that you're not afraid of what a woman can reveal. I could give a fuck about one of my ex-girlfriends or somebody like that coming out and trying to expose me of something I did. Try to expose me. Anybody should, try to expose me. It's just going to be funny. You're just going to make yourself look dumb. Because I can say the shit that I did. And I did a lot of shameful stuff. I did. I talk about it. Because I'm not that person. I'm not going to be held down by the former inferior me. I'm trying to aspire to be the superior me. That's the whole point. So that's these little hoops that we jump through as consumers and make the consumers look like clowns. That's what that was about with the little theft locks and the sunglasses. You go to Home Depot, everything has a damn alarm on it. Then you have to go, okay, can you please unlock this for me? And then you have to go unlock it and treat you like a kid, No trust. There's no trust in this society. And there could be trust if there was harsher penalties on people who violate contracts and violate property rights. Okay, point number 3, annoying commercials, annoying ass commercials. That was a late addition to this, but this is just what I've noticed. So it's blatant disrespect and a mockery of humanity. Actually, these commercials. The Super Bowl, it's the biggest TV spectacle of the year. It's famous for what? The halftime show and the Super Bowl commercials, right? A lot of people just tune in for the commercials. They don't even care about the damn game. And those commercials on there, sometimes they're good. Some of them are good. But they're really a joke and a mockery of masculinity specifically. It's a mockery of men. And then the halftime show makes a mockery of music. I thought actually the last one was decent with Usher, and especially when Ludacris and Lil Jon came on. I'm like, oh my God, somebody with balls came on. Glorious. At least those people are some real artists. Usually it's just, commercial pop stuff. But still, mockery of music. That's not real music. So, and interestingly, we'll come back to real music at the end. Then the next thing, this automated customer service over the phone. You call anytime you need something, you call them and you know what you're going to get. We are experiencing higher than usual call volumes. Your call is very important to us. And there's these things that they use them every time now. Either they talk about pandemic or like during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's like 4 years later now, but they still use the same thing. It's like people who never changed their website. Or this, please listen carefully as our menu options have changed. You hear that every time, right? When did the menu options change? Why is it even relevant to say? And again, I know that people are going to, you just got to stick with me because I'm going to prove all this stuff. Why somebody would do this and how. Because it just seems like too dumb. It seems like too insignificant. Like why is this a symptom of tyranny? Why is it a symbol of tyranny? People don't get it. And yes, there is a profit-based self-interest for this. I'm aware that, you know, companies, they have an interest in making these automatic menus with automatic operators with long menus, but that's not what a free market produces. This isn't, don't buy the bullshit. It's not capitalism. This is what a manipulated so-called free market produces, and really a soft command economy. Because this shit that makes the customer irritated, the stuff that treats him like he has to wait in line. What do you wait in line for? You don't wait in line you know, at the fast food line. You wait in line at the DMV, at you know, at government things, and then you'll wait in line at the hospital, things you actually need, depending on, you know, unless you go to the emergency room, yeah, you'll still wait. My point is, it's command economies that does this. When a corporation has such control over a customer base due to a lack of options, a lack of competition really, then they can treat them badly and still maximize earnings. Whereas in a free market, and therefore a free society, a corporation would have to treat people well to maximize earnings. And since it's on my mind, Louis Rossmann is a channel on YouTube and Odyssey that talks about this. He has a repair shop, right? A third party repair. He repairs all these Apple products. He repairs all these electronics, and he will talk about this week after week about all these companies that make you jump through hoops. They don't let you repair things you can't go. And when you need customer service, they basically treat you like trash. Or when you have all these subscriptions now, Netflix and Showtime and all this stuff, you'll pay a premium to get ad-free service, and then they still put ads. HP with their ink program makes you pay for a monthly ink subscription, and even when you have enough ink, they won't let you print unless, you know, you pay that a monthly fee. There are plenty of examples. I can't think of them and articulate them well because that's not really the point, but I throw him in there too because there are so many examples. I can't possibly fit them all into this episode. I'm just trying to kind of take from the different areas that I'm seeing, but the evidence is everywhere, down to video games and why they suck. Certain video games, they suck, like Madden, NFL, like football game, and NBA. It's the same game every year. Games are getting worse. They have all these microtransactions. This is not an accident, and people will make these videos year after year about how bad the game is and how bad the developers are. Nobody is really seeing that this is intentional to demoralize and collapse society. But I'll get to that. This is just supposed to be the ranting part. But I want to throw in Rossmann in there because it's just another example of somebody who's seeing this going on in their field of expertise. See, everybody has this going on in their field. Like engineers will have this going on. They'll work with people who are incompetent, and they think it's just incompetence. Where is all this incompetence coming from? Nobody sees the entire web. Is that this is a rotting, a collapse of society intentionally. And I'll talk about where it comes from. Where was I? So, real free market, you have to treat your customers well. But when you have a monopoly, or where you have the help of the government, or you have control of the market, then you can treat them like shit, and they still get your money because you have no competitors. They have nowhere else to go, right? You don't have another DMV you can go to get a license. So that's why you go to the DMV and get shitty service. Because why would they give you good service? They have no reason to. That's what control does. And only in socialism do you get low standards for services. So that makes you think, right? Out of control corporatism. What modern Marxists point to as the evils of society. These corporations that control people and they have a stranglehold on society. So could it be that that's actually socialism. And indeed, that is what we have today. Free market is a living miracle of a machine, like the human body, right? That's my metaphor here. Free market is like the human being that works as intended. Socialism is like a corpse of a human body. It mimics that, but it's actually dead. And what we have today is in the Western mixed economy, so-called capitalism, is like a corpse, but it has a beating heart and it has a working brain implanted into it, so it has enough life in there to fling the rotten flesh around and move the lifeless limbs around. That is the system we have. So, and then the Marxists, today's Marxists, say, look, capitalism is so, it's so evil, it's causing all this inequality, not knowing that it's actually the socialism in it that is causing that. That's how it goes. And it's really disrespect. These things are all disrespect, rendering services to human beings. And aside from the real world subversive agenda, this is the psychological lesson being taught here. It's the lesson that any form of dependence is objectively bad for you. It's not good to be dependent on anything or anybody. It's not good. Because if you could solve your issue without calling customer service, then when you did call customer service, they'd be a hell of a lot more nicer to you. When somebody knows that you need them, they treat you badly. And I'm not saying it should be that way or it has to be that way, but it is that way. And that's the lesson, that dependence without love breeds contempt. And remember that for your relationships, any relationship you have. If there's an imbalance and the other person knows that you need them, unless they really love you, you will be mistreated. And that's how I saw my customers when I used to sell cocaine and Xanax and opiates, right? I used to do all that, and I started to really resent the people that came to me, and I made money off of them. But I started to see them as like lower than me, because they went and did the same things, and they went through their withdrawal, and then they called me, and then they acted like crackheads, and they used to irritate me. That's how it goes. When somebody's dependent on you, you stop respecting them. That's how it goes. Now, before anyone would even want to hear me prove how this is done and who does it, which I'm gonna do, I have to show a motive, right? Without a motive, you don't have a crime. You have to say the why. Why would that work? What does anybody get out of people being dissatisfied and frustrated? Well, the answer is, look, being moral takes effort. It takes effort to be a good person. Unless you're homeschooled or raised the right way, you've been loved since you were a baby, brought up the right way, or incredibly lucky, then it doesn't take effort to be a good person. Then it's just muscle memory. Or if you've put in the effort or you've put in the work to kind of rewire yourself to be a good person, then it's just like muscle memory. It's automatic to be moral. But for the rest of us, for most people, it takes effort to do the right thing. It's not easy to do the right thing. It's easy to be lazy. It's easy to take things that don't belong to us. It's easy to lie and steal, okay, actually. So, when your environment then is shitty, when your environment is trash, when your environment is upside down and it's an environment of sickness and decay, then you don't feel like making any effort. You don't feel like making the effort. If your room is a mess, right, and you don't take care of yourself, it's hard to produce good art, it's hard to do good work, it's hard to treat yourself well, it's hard to exercise. So when you're at a store now and every day people are stealing and making a mess, then after a few days you're not going to bother to stack the shelves nicely and do a good job anymore. You want to do a good job when it's actually well received and respected and it actually stays there. Nobody would mow their lawn if the lawn wasn't there the next day. Nobody would care. It's about care. So you, as that person who stops making the effort because society is decaying, then you're the one who loses, because you stop living honorably and you start living in mediocrity. And that's called demoralization. It's accepting mediocrity, accepting the conditions of garbage and trash. So with that, I'm going to go into demoralization and prove that that's what's being done. So here's my proof. Court is in session. Exhibit A. This is something that's called the New Order of the Barbarians. So it's an audio tape by Dr. Lawrence Dunegan. He's a pediatrician for 35 years. And on April 20th of 1969, he attended this speech. It's a speech given by another pediatrician who was the director of Planned Parenthood at the time. It's a speech by Dr. Richard Day. Okay, both of these men are dead now, and actually these tapes were recorded after Richard Day died, or around that time. So not for 19 years. 20 years later, in 1988, Lawrence Dunegan recorded a series of these tapes and what today is called New Order of the Barbarians. So he took notes. The way the story goes, how he tells it, is he took notes on a napkin, and he, from memory, because this was such a thorough and shocking and unexpected lecture, this speech that was given by Richard Day, Lawrence Dunegan remembers it, and he goes through it. He's talked about it many times. He did an interview with G. Edward Griffin. He has the audio tapes. And if you check him as a source, you can scrutinize him all you want. The guy's telling the truth. Okay? And I'll go back to this as a source, I think, over the next few weeks, because not many people talk about this, but it's a great thing to point to when you want to prove to people that it's actually being controlled from the shadows. This is a great example of social engineers and occultists from in 1969 talking about their plans. It's remarkable. So I'll go back to this, but not all of it today, over the next few weeks, I think. And another one of those is Yuri Bezmenov's lectures about subversion. This is another one that many people have seen that's kind of resurfaced. And Bezmenov is a Soviet whistleblower who talks about the plan to demoralize Western society. Right? This is I don't remember exactly when he spoke about this, but it's around that time, right? The 80s. He was a KGB affiliated journalist. He wasn't directly employed by the KGB as an agent, but hey, I say this all the time, occult web of control, that's how it works. The people that are actually carrying out all these things, they're not taking direct orders from some sort of agency. Very often the people that are in the CAI and in the Secret Service, they're not going to be the ones who are actually carrying out the secret agendas. It's these people who are involved, they're on the periphery, they're exerting some type of influence, but there's no paper trail. Okay, that's why it's hard to prove. Okay, that's why it's only Exhibit A in my court here. So that's another one of these sources. And these two sources, Dunegan and Bezmenov, they hold up even in today's culture, in today's climate and practices of calling everything a white supremacist conspiracy theory. But nobody fact checks them. Nobody, you won't find it. Nobody speaks up on Richard Day's behalf. Nobody comes out of the woodwork saying, no, I was there and that speech didn't go like that. No one who attended the meeting says it went any differently than it did. Nobody says it didn't happen. And in fact, if you look up Richard Day, you see that his views were very in line with what Lawrence Dunegan reports. And Richard Day died in 1989. He was a pediatrician at Columbia University Hospital. That will come up again in this show. In 1964, he became president of the American Board of Pediatrics, right? So he's very involved in decision-making in medicine. In 1965, he was asked to take the post of medical director of Planned Parenthood International, and he accepted. Why? Because of his strong conviction that the issue of overpopulation was arguably the most important problem faced by this planet. And I didn't say that. A random person didn't say that. His family said that. And you can look this up. His own family says this. Dr. Richard Day. You can look this up. Pull on these strings. So now I'll go into Dunegan's recollection of what Richard Day said. This is a section called Curtailment of American Industrial Preeminence. So I'm going to start rattling off these things that this guy said 50 years ago they would do. That was the plan. And you'll see that they're very close to that little rant I made in the beginning about the roads, about the sunglasses and the damn stupid commercials. So, American industrial preeminence. American industry came under discussion. I'm quoting now from Dunnigan. It was the first that I'd heard the term global interdependence or that notion. The stated plan was that different parts of the world would be assigned different roles of industry and commerce in a unified global system. The continued preeminence of the United States and the relative independence and self-sufficiency of the United States would have to be changed. This was one of the several times he said, in order to create a new structure, you have to first tear down the old. And American industry was one example of that. Our system would have to be curtailed in order to give other countries a chance to build their industries, because otherwise they would not be able to compete against the United States. And this was especially true of our heavy industries that would be cut back while the same industries were being developed in other countries, notably Japan. And at this point, there was some discussion of steel and particularly automobiles. I remember saying that automobiles would be imported from Japan on an equal footing with our own domestically produced automobiles, but the Japanese product would be better. Things would be made so that they would break and fall apart, that is in the United States. No, it is not a globalist conspiracy that my throat got irritated during the show. Sometimes it just goes like that. But many times these minor irritations are intentional. But no, I don't have a complex of thinking people are following me. I don't think, everybody's looking through every camera on the phone. I don't get caught up with being super private. My privacy, you see, I put my name and face up, and if anybody's, watching me, good. Come get some. It's not anything paranoid. I have no schizoid paranoia about any of this. I'm just talking about real stated goals and continuing with those goals. Back to Lawrence Dunnigan. So the automobiles would break and fall apart, that is in the United States, so that people would tend to prefer the imported variety, and this would give a bit to boost of foreign competitors. One example was Japanese. In 1969, Japanese automobiles, if they were sold here at all, I don't remember, but they certainly weren't very popular. But the idea was, if you could get a little bit disgusted with your Ford, GM, or Chrysler product or whatever, because little things like window handles would fall off more and plastic parts would break, which, had they have been made of metal, would hold up. Your patriotism about buying American would soon give way to practicality that if you bought Japanese, German, or imported, that it would last longer and you would be better off. Patriotism would go down the drain then. If it was mentioned elsewhere, things were being made to fall apart too, but I don't remember specific items or if they were even stated other than automobiles, but I do recall of having the impression, sort of in my imagination, of a surgeon having something fall apart in his hands in the operating room at a critical time. Was he including this sort of thing in his discussion? But somewhere in this discussion about things being made deliberately defective and unreliable, not only was to tear down patriotism, but just to be a little source of irritation to people who would use such things. Okay, that's 1989. Music will get worse, another section. As regards music, he made a rather straightforward statement, like music will get worse. In 1969, rock music was getting more and more unpleasant. It was interesting, just his words, the way he expressed it. It would get worse, acknowledging that it was already bad. Lyrics would become more openly sexual. No new sugary romantic music would be publicized like that which had been written before that time. I'm reading these notes I made. Look, I put a lot of stuff together. Social engineers and policymakers see the world the way psychotics or alcoholics see the world. So wanting to control others is a symptom of brain damage. The reason I wrote that here is because these people look at music and they don't like it. They blame music for being a certain way. So not only is that a reflection of their low self-esteem, they now blame society. It's like a bipolar type of thing. It's holding contradictory views. It's cognitive dissonance. On one hand, they can't appreciate good music, and then they blame society, saying that they don't know music, they make low quality music. But this is really this is just a little foreshadowing. I'm gonna get to music at the end. I threw that in here. I'm gonna make that point at this time. So anyway, music will get worse, right? This is so music, commercials, all these things, annoying commercials, annoying music. Yes, this is part of it. Another section, no more security. Nothing is permanent. Streets would be rerouted, renamed. Areas you had not seen in a while would become unfamiliar. Among other things, this would contribute to older people feeling that it was time to move on. People would feel that they couldn't even keep up with the changes in areas that were once familiar. Vacant buildings would be allowed to stand empty and deteriorate, and streets would be allowed to deteriorate in certain localities. The purpose of this was to provide the jungle, the depressed atmosphere for the unfit. Somewhere in the same connection, he mentioned that buildings and bridges would be made so that they would collapse after a while. There would be more accidents involving airplanes and railroads and automobiles. All of this to contribute to the feeling of insecurity, that nothing was safe. All these accidents, you're seeing more of that, right? The bridge collapses, you're seeing that, and roads being left in worse conditions. Hey, welcome to Chicago. This is what's going on with these constructions. And now you're getting used to always construction, always being under construction, never the construction being completed. You'll never get your old society back. And I come back to saying this, after the pandemic, you'll never get your old society back. You'll never get the lively Saturday nights. This is all part of it. It's all part of subversion. And this is corroborated by Yuri Bezmenov and his work on subversion. And he very, very clearly states that this is a war against capitalism. What Lawrence Dunnigan says in that section about American industrial preeminence. Different person from a different world. They don't know about each other, right? They don't even agree, because Bezmenov says that it's the actual Soviet Union doing this. It isn't. That's just from his perspective. He sees that it's the Soviet Marxist mentality being now thrown on American society. It's really not that. It's really much deeper. It's much more global. It's much more subtle. But Bezmenov, he mentions that all the aspects of American culture that are being targeted today, it's the same thing. From the nuclear family to what characters in movies and TV shows symbolize, to lower standards for products and services in general. And people don't talk about this. People think no, that's not happening. There's no way that could happen. And it's because it's not being done by government. It's too complicated. That it's not really done by a tyrant, but by the guy with the crown who controls the army. It's not just the army. It's much deeper than that. It's much more complex, and unfortunately, people are not complex thinkers. Bezmenov talks about mediocre journalism, that journalists would become just mediocre, and in fact, being mediocre in your profession is what advances you. If you were too talented, you would not advance in your profession, and we're seeing that today. It's been that way for a long time, actually. And Bezmenov knows, because he's a journalist, whistleblower, by the way. He's a journalist. And ironically, just last week I read that New York Times article and broke that down. That's mediocre journalism. Think about the kind of respect that the nightly news and New York Times used to command. It used to be like respect. Even the announcers who call the fights. Watch Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, their first fight. Listen to the commentators, to the announcers. When the man got up, in front of a microphone back in the day, he would be dressed well. He would be treating himself with respect. He would be very dedicated to what he's doing. Not anymore. Anybody can do anything now. And that's demoralization. That's why Yuri Bezmenov is my exhibit B. But I won't spend too much time on him, because he really repeats a lot of this stuff, right? That Dunnigan said. It's just a different version of it. But I'm mentioning him just like I mentioned Louis Rossmann, because it's a great option if you want to just open up a YouTube video and see the guy's face actually talking about this from his experience. And so you could see it all for yourself and how real it is. That's from 1984, right? So it's really before Dunnigan. They both experienced it earlier. It's the same era. And again, nobody calls that into question. Nobody says that Bezmenov's making it up or that didn't happen. Nobody. It's accepted. It's just, it's better to leave people like that alone. And that's why my show is left alone. That's why I don't really get censored. The best thing to do with somebody like me is to just make sure that too many people don't fucking see these videos. Don't, that's the plan. So, same era as Lawrence Dunnigan, it's this post-World War II social engineering. And that is accepted by the mainstream and really ignored by the mainstream. But my Exhibit C is much more controversial, but it's also more powerful because it's more fundamental and it's older and it's a part of history. It can't really be wiped. It can't really be ignored or swept under the rug. It's called the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School was founded in 1929. Now this is a substantial chunk of history, the Frankfurt School. And thus, when you make connections between the Frankfurt School and its ambitions to what's going on in America today, that's actually called an anti-Semitic alt-right conspiracy theory. It is, look that up. And that's because it's too big to integrate into accepted mainstream history. It has to be demonized, right? So anti-Semitic gets thrown as a label on it. And you'll see why. So another thing that I've talked about, modern globalism can be traced to the late 1800s in the forms of communism and Nazism, right, around that time period. So those are the left wing and right wing of totalitarian global government. After feudalism went away, like the old school monarchic, absolute monarchy control came apart, and you had some freedom, you had some representative government, you had some, people learning how to read and having more money, having more time to think. So then the ideologies came up with, okay, we need, like local governments are done with, we need global government to get these people back under control. So you had communism and Nazism spring up around this time. Now the new versions of those, they're offshoots, which still dominate today, because it's not communism and Nazism that dominate today, it's their children, their offsprings. They are technocracy on the right, and the soft socialism or Fabian socialism on the left, right? Progressivism, social justice, environmentalism, that's the left. Those are today's left and right wings of the totalitarian global system. And I talked about technocracy being founded by Howard Scott in 1933, and then the Frankfurt School is founded in 1923. It's this time period, and it's the origin of Marxist subversion of Western society, which is really what this show is about. Subversion instead of communist revolution, which didn't work, incremental transformation. And really, incrementalism is what the Fabian Society is known for, and they were founded in 1884. The Fabian Society, their emblem was the wolf in sheep's clothing, literally. It's a wolf with like a dead sheep strapped to it. They were founded in 1884, so earlier, right? But the Fabian Society actually had a mix of these far right and far left views. They actually advocated for eugenics. They were kind of a hybrid. In the early years, they would actually have qualities of more of the technocratic wing of totalitarianism. But beside the point. Anyway, the Frankfurt School, what is called officially the Institute for Social Research, was a small elite group of intellectuals. They met and they talked, and then they published work about how degraded the free Western society was, how it deserved to collapse, how capitalism is evil. And that's where this subversion of Yuri Bezmenov and then the demoralization of Lawrence Dunnigan originates from. See, they were whistleblowers for movements that are the offsprings of the Frankfurt School. And if you don't believe me, look up subversion, and even the Wikipedia page about subversion says this. It's on one hand, I'll tell you it's a anti-Semitic conspiracy. On the other hand, it's accepted history that this is what this is the family tree of that movement. This is from that page. Recent writers in the postmodern and post-structuralist traditions, including particularly environmentalist and feminist writers, have prescribed a very broad form of subversion. It is not directly the parliamentary government which should be subverted in their view, but the dominant cultural forces, such as patriarchy, individualism, and scientism. By the way, when they say scientism, they don't mean false government science. They mean scientism in the way that scientific method, right? That the scientific method, individuality, masculine controlled society, masculine forces in society. They were against those cultural forces, right? The drivers of society. Continuing, this broadening of the target of subversion owes much to the ideas of Antonio Gramsci, who stressed that communist revolution required the erosion of the particular form of cultural hegemony within society. And this term cultural hegemony is a big one. If you want to look this up, research that term. Cultural hegemony means the heart of individual society, of free society. In a free society, the most capable, the most skilled, the best will be exalted. So they want to subvert, they want to do sabotage, to tear down that cultural hegemony, so that those people who actually deserve all the praise and all the wealth, they don't get that praise and the wealth. They get kept down by the people who deserve it the least. And that's what Marxism is. So Frankfurt School was founded in 1923 by Felix Weil, the son of a wealthy Jewish grain merchant who studied under a Marxist and became a Marxist. The institute was taken over in 1924 by Karl Grunberg, a Jewish, German, Austrian law professor. I'm just mentioning their families because there's patterns that should be taken into account of. And it's really not it is relevant that they're Jewish, but it's more relevant that they're little rich boys. They're spoiled brats. They sat around and they never had any struggle, and they looked at society and they looked down on it. And we'll get into that. So in 1930 it was taken over by Max Horkheimer. And Horkheimer was born into a conservative, wealthy, Orthodox Jewish family, son of a successful businessman. Hey, common theme. Children of rich Jewish parents, owing their affluence to capitalism, but preaching hatred for the capitalist system. And really it's self-hatred, as I'll talk about. So 3 years later, when Hitler comes to power, the institute gets shut down, because that's what the Nazis did. The right totalitarian wing was in power then. You know, both of them are bad, but yeah, they get shut down. So Max Horkheimer, he moves the institute to where? To Columbia University in New York. I said that we would go back to Columbia University. So so what this guy does, Horkheimer, he leaves Germany. He runs away from Hitler's totalitarian government. He comes to America, and he says that actually America is totalitarian, is a totalitarian society, just like Nazi Germany. He literally said that. And then he wrote this stuff about the authoritarian personality, and saying that basically that capitalism, they call it late stage capitalism. So right now it's fine, but it's like a cancer, and in the late stages it's going to destroy society. And it's that late stage capitalism that creates Adolf Hitler and his kind, which is of course a joke, because his party, Hitler's party, is called the National Socialist Party. So it's crazy, it's batshit, it's ridiculous garbage, but this is what happened. And the modern day children of this school of thought, they're the ones whose voice is the loudest today. You'll still see communist unity, communist, socialist stickers in the city. They're all in the cities. Columbia University in New York, they got students protesting there today. That influences there. The University of Chicago, that influences there. The University of Chicago, what was the other school other than Columbia University, which was kind of a center, a headquarters for the Frankfurt School. Why? Chicago and New York, this is where the heart, this is where the most people are, where the greatest minds were. This is where the symbol of American freedom was sprouting and growing. And of course that is where the war was fought, right? Because this is a war. Subversion is a long-term sabotage war. So we were talking about Max Horkheimer, and under him, really, the institute became what we know it to be today. It's a mix of Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud. So not just Marxian economic socialism, but the psychological dogma for collectivism and globalism. And he's also known for critical theory, which critical theory, what it is just what it sounds like. It's critiquing society, saying, yeah, you might think you're free, but you're actually living under slavery. You might think that you like to have nice things and that you have a good life, but you're actually living a lie. Everything is bad about America. They came from like literally Nazi genocide, and then they came here and they said that actually no, this is all bad over here. And that's what we have today. It's critical theory. Everyone's a fucking critic today. Everybody has opinions to say about shit that they don't do. They want to tell me about my show, about my music. They don't do shows. They don't do music. They don't do anything. But they can criticize your shit. That's what we have today. It's exactly the types that I'm going to talk about. Can anyone just appreciate a job well done anymore and praise someone? No. They have to tell them all about how you could have done it better. Oh yeah, good show, but I think you should really do this, or it could be better if you do this. And they think they're helping you. They think it's some sort of constructive criticism. No, shut the fuck up. And everybody has opinion. Your opinions are bull. Seriously. Even in sports, they don't talk about a triumph or like an amazing play made like they used to, or they talk about a heartbreaking loss. No, it's all about breaking it down. Should the coach have called a timeout with 20 seconds left? Or why didn't he run out of bounds? Or look at this decision that he made. Or let's talk about the referee's call. You want to get inside the arena when you're not in the arena and break it down and analyze it to that depth. And you're not realizing the beauty in it. Thank the Frankfurt School for this. This is where it comes from. And Max Horkheimer wrote this thing called Egoism and the Freedom Movement. And really that's what makes it. These cultural socialists are so horrific that I've really become disillusioned by the words truth and freedom, how they have been used, right? Jody Hildebrand used to talk about living in truth, and a lot of people who talk about truth and living in truth, they're like religious nutcases, right? They believe in like cult stuff, and that's truth to them. And then freedom, the way these Marxists use freedom, they're talking about the kind of freedom that you're just accepting your lowest nature and everybody has nothing, and that's freedom somehow. When Marxists speak of freedom, it's being free from having to compete. They're talking about being free from accountability, and that doesn't exist in the world. And when I look at this stuff, I think, man, Ayn Rand was right. I used to think that when I was new to her philosophy and her views, I'm like, man, why did she make her main thing selfishness? Because nobody's gonna buy that. Like, why are you so focused on selfishness? Because selfishness is not inherently good. Why don't you say it a different way? It's like, I wish she would have phrased it differently. Like, this is the reason she doesn't really get her point across, because people hear selfishness, and that's not really the main point. But she was totally right, because it's not about even freedom. It's not even about freedom, because it's too damn emotional of a concept. You have to really battle this crazy rhetoric back. I fight for the right to be selfish and to keep private property. That's what it comes down to. It's really about selfishness. We have to stop taking steps back and just being on the defensive. No, it's about being selfish. You have to have the right to be selfish. Fuck what you think is the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, the good thing to do. Do you own your own body or not? Can you live for yourself or not? That's what spirituality comes down to, and people don't really get that. They've bought the bullshit. It starts with what God wants you to do. First of all, is be selfish. You have to have the right to be selfish, without anybody else telling you what the right thing to do is. Because once they do that, once they can take control of your decision-making process and they can dictate morality to you, so-called morality to you, that's where all this violence happens, where all this control happens. So that's a real controversial viewpoint, just to throw that in there. And people don't want to live in that world, but it's the truth. We're not all gonna hold hands and be one human family, not for a long, long time. It's when we all grow up. That's when we can live in that utopia. We're not gonna transition to a utopia right away. No, we're gonna have to become selfish first and actually take responsibility for our actions, then learn from our mistakes, and then we can actually treat ourselves well. People are afraid of selfishness and responsibility more than anything. And these Marxist theorists and philosophers, they're just shit talkers. They're just shit talkers about what you're doing is not good enough, but they know what you should be doing, right? So you're not good enough to worry about yourself, but they're good enough somehow to tell you what's good for you. And how many times have you heard, this is another thing, that reason alone is deceptive? You can't trust reason. You're just an intellectual. You're just looking at facts. And there's more to it than facts. You need to listen to your emotions. Guys, you've bought Marxist propaganda. We're supposed to bring reason and emotion into alignment. And that's done through maturation. And that's my point. We have to grow up as a people, and then we can actually unite and live as one. And yes, we are all one. But we have to grow up first before we can do that. The world will not leap forward 10 steps into a mutually beneficial utopia not until people grow up first. These people sat there thinking about their wealth, escaped Hitler. They come to America and they look at your toaster and your microwave being mass produced, and they say it's totalitarianism. Right? So according to them, a dance song is lifeless and shallow, but classical music somehow is spiritual by default. Why? No, it isn't. A lot of classical music is low-hanging fruit, actually. Violins and flutes and pianos are beautiful, but it lacks the individual voice, the lyrics. It lacks selfishness again. How about speaking of music, I'm going to talk about Max's friend, Theodor Adorno. That's why I'm talk all this stuff about music, because this is my main point here. But how about opening your mouth and actually, lyrically talking about your day or something? That's real honest. That's real hard to do as a musician. And these guys, they don't want that undertaking. They don't want people to be egoic and actually talk about what's inside of them. They're actually elitist. It has to be sad. It has to be somber. Respectful listening to them is everybody has to listen to Wagner and Bach. That's what it comes down to, right? I'm just thinking about people aren't gonna get this. They're gonna think it doesn't connect. But I'm gonna try to connect the dots. So Max's friend Theodor Adorno, I'm saving him for last because he's probably the most well-known Frankfurt person, with a dishonorable mention going to Herbert Marcuse, who actually worked for the Office of Strategic Services, which is the wartime predecessor of the CIA. So one of these guys is like a CIA insider in America. And another dishonorable mention goes to Erich Fromm, a German Jewish psychologist, Orthodox Jewish parents, and he is a guy who sympathized with medieval feudalism. He wrote a book called Escape from Freedom, in which he talks about that rigid authoritarianism is actually how we feel free and happy. That when people have freedom, they're actually not happy, and they need somebody to control them, and that's when they can actually let go and feel happy. That's them too. But Adorno is a so-called philosopher, German philosopher, Jewish father, ran a successful wine export business, and Adorno is known for his critique of music. And this is a boy whose mom is a singer. He plays the piano as a child, but he's growing up in the early 1900s. So World War I happens, and then there's all this nationalism in Germany, right? So then there's a new German pride and patriotism at the time, and that's just like today in America and Europe too. 100 years earlier, and the same thing happened today. Polarization. Fervent, passionate left and right-wing movements. We think that we have unprecedented polarization in society. It actually happened 100 years ago in Germany, because 100 years ago, Germany and Austria, that was America. Okay, in the old world, that was kind of the that was the cutting edge of society at the time, along with America as well. America was just growing, but and really not today. The so-called extreme right is really not that extreme. It's pretty benign and delicate comparatively, but just wait, because that may change. You might see a revival of Nazism, and I've talked about that. But I'm using Adorno's story to talk about the broken soul of these people and how it affects their thinking. Because this guy wrote the biggest, most nonsensical garbage about music, and I'm a musician, so I'm not taking that. These elitist so-called intellectuals 100 years ago, just like today, these are mental bullies. This is like a little guy who is bullying everybody else. It's a bully that you don't see. It's when I see bullying around me, I grab the bully. I'm gonna grab him. I'm gonna smack him around, and I'm gonna make him my bitch. That's the world I come from. And Adorno is long dead, but his mentality and his spirit is very alive. I'm treating this as a living enemy because it is. There are many of them. So I'm gonna make sure to dig his grave even further this time, even deeper. But I'm mentioning his upbringing because it should be understood what created these people in the Frankfurt School and what is giving birth to this stuff that sounds so outlandish when I say it, that people will never understand it, that there is a plan to make music worse, that they make products fall apart. It's so crazy to people, this type of thinking. They would never do it. So I'm explaining to you the upbringing that creates that type of a broken soul and that type of a psychotic individual. And these guys in the Frankfurt School, they were all useful idiots. None of these are high-level master mind control occultists. They're all useful idiots, just like all Marxists are. No one in the Frankfurt School understood exactly what they were doing. Really, they may have to a degree, but some of the things Fromm says, some of the things Marcuse says, some of them make sense. They're not totally evil. These were broken little boys who are lost in the world. So this guy Adorno, he was a good little boy. I'm sure his Jewish businessman father never gave him any attention. He never gave him enough love. So he associated love with playing Beethoven on the piano, probably with his mom, right? Or maybe he got approval from his dad. It was probably the only time his dad paid attention to him, when he played the piano. One of those two things, or both of them, were true. So then World War I happens, right? He's a teenager, he's a kid, and that artsy and peaceful energy, it turns into this forceful patriotic energy. And he sees his, or he associates that with his father, who abandoned him, right? So he sees his friends turning to that side. He feels abandoned. Either way, it's parental abandonment, because people see their tribe or country as a symbol of the parent as well. It's not just about the parent, it's about the country as a parent. That's why you have fatherlands and motherlands, okay? That's why you put your hand on your heart, because it's about love. It's you love your country like your parent. So Adorno, he gravitated to the left, to the Marxist side, because that's where at that time you could still have feelings and intuition and irrationality, right? Because mainstream German society shifted to technocracy. In the Nazi culture, there was no art, no music, just duty to your country. These were both enslavers of the mind and soul. And in a way, that's a defense of the Frankfurt School, because you could see why they developed the views they did under the conditions. That's why I mentioned that they all come from Orthodox Jewish upbringings, because that does that. That kind of a society, it's very Old Testament strict, right? There's none of that savior love, right? That's why today we're dominated. The mainstream is dominated by Christianity, right? Like more the New Testament, because it's all about a transfer from the masculine, right, from the fatherly, colder energy to the nurturing, motherly energy. That's all it is. So this is where they're coming from. But the problem is with these people, Fromm and Adorno, they have a horrifically low view of man. They view mankind as a dirty, sinful animal. And Adorno, he focused on music. He denounced jazz and popular music, said that it's too lighthearted, it's too happy, it's too capitalist. And he actually said that the world, after moving from feudalism to industrialism, is full of war and poverty and pain, and that the music should reflect that. That was his take. And it's a miserable, self-flagellating, self-loathing position to take, and it shows you who these people are. They think they're not deserving of pleasure. That's what creates these people that I talk about. These people that did genocides and killed millions of people, they are people who cannot experience pleasure, specifically with relationships and with sex. There's a lot of that. You look at sexual sadists, the Jeffrey Dahmers or something like that. You see a lot of them. They're either impotent, or they had some kind of an accident, or they were not fertile. There's a lot of this, and I'll take my time and talk about that at the end. I don't want to rush the ending, because it comes to a climax. Really, it comes to a unity. All this stuff, these strings that I'm trying to tie together, these dots that I'm trying to connect. But about music, everybody knows that jazz is beautiful. That's why these people, they talk about Adorno today. Even at the time, even the people who are Marxists, they say that he was off the rails, that his stuff about music was a bunch of garbage, because it really was. But this kind of, it didn't die with Adorno. It pervades today. But when you look at his writings, nobody agrees with him today for the most part, because you can feel that beautiful music is beautiful. That jazz, for example, is that freedom. It's letting the voice of God speak through us, right? Can you imagine if there was no Billie Holiday or Nina Simone, no James Brown, no rock and roll, no 80s disco music, no hip hop? That world, would it have been a happier world? Adorno, he resented the masses for being happy when listening to music, because music reflects the age, always. Art always reflects the spirit of the artist. So obviously, when people had better living conditions, right? Industrial Revolution started in the 1900s. Obviously, people became more free and happy, and the music became more free and happy. And so that's what the Marxist school comes from. It's these unhappy people. It's a small circle of wealthy, unsatisfied elitists. They're sad nerds that resented the masses for being happy. And that's Marxism as a whole, actually. It's these German and Austrian Jewish people who never worked a day in their life, who are extremely sad and unfulfilled, and they want the rest of the world to be as sad as they are. So they also want their feudal elitism back, because if they're sad and everybody else is sad, then they want to rule in hell, right? They want to control the masses, and control becomes a substitute for love. And that's how it is in relationships. Another psychological lesson: when love fades away, control sets in. That's how it goes. And with Adorno, it's in his name, Adorno. He adores no one. He adores nothing and no one. And that's the psychological and spiritual cause of all violence and tyranny. It comes down to this. These people who control the world through the shadows, through influence and manipulation, they do it because they've never had a woman look at them with adoration. Because you notice it's all men doing this, right? Why? Why don't you see women doing this? There's like one or two, you got like Margaret Sanger, even you can't put too much on Madame Blavatsky. Like, where are all the women doing this bullshit? It's mostly men. Why? Because we experience, as human beings, all of us, we experience the divine love through our mother, first of all, when we need it the most. Because a baby boy is a future man and a mom is a woman, that's where the bond is the strongest. That's where the force is strongest. So that's also where the pain is the most intense, when that bond is severed, broken, or corrupted. And that can be healed with loving relationships. But these people like Adorno, they never had them. They never had loving relationships. And that's what creates tyrants and abusers. It's a lack of loving relationships, or the lacking the ability to do it. Could be brain damage, and that's what primary psychopathy is. It's It's a disability that prevents you from experiencing love through relationships with others. And that's why they become Marxists. Because to experience loving relationships with others, you have to be selfish. You have to be self-interested. Love is based on self-interest. And then it goes to sacrifice, because there's love there. Sacrifice without love is what? Control. Back to what I said. You know, it blows my mind to think, if one day a girl would have just smiled at Karl Marx or Immanuel Kant, maybe 100 million people wouldn't have died. Maybe the world wouldn't have become what it has. You know, like if Hitler could have just gone to the gym and found a nice freedom-loving German girl, maybe history would have been different. And it sounds funny, but it's I think you can feel that that's really what it comes down to. What it comes down to is men who feel loved and admired, they love freedom and beauty, and those who don't, they look for control and they look for ugliness, and it's all they see. Unfortunate, but that's what it is. So, final words about the Frankfurt School. Some final words as we lower them into their grave. Is really a question. What happened to it? And it's a big goose egg. It's a big nothing. What happened to the Frankfurt School? It faded into oblivion. You could look up their timeline. These guys just died. They went away, but there's no finality. It seems like they just kind of faded away into obscurity. And it's just like technocracy. What happened to it? It's like, what happened? Where did these movements go? Nobody knows. And that's because they were successful. They successfully infiltrated society. And that is why these things that you're seeing today, these minor aggravations, that mentality is alive and well today. It's permeated everybody. It's permeated the population. So it's no longer Adorno. It's no longer Horkheimer or Marcuse or Fromm. Regular, everyday people are saying this. Their mentality is what today creates the shitty cars, the terrible phone service, treating people like a big dumb herd, making them degrade themselves and lower themselves to get food and shelter, pushing low quality services out, outsourcing work to people who resent the people that they work for, and most of all, primarily, directing all types of hatred and ill will to anybody who is happy and successful. Anybody who's good looking, anybody who has anything good, we say they don't deserve it, right? Everybody's a fucking critical theorist. That's what it is. It's a very dangerous thing, envy. Too much envy in the world. Too much thinking that the guy over there doesn't deserve what they have. How about everybody deserves what they have? And whether that's empirically true or not, that is the most pure, really spiritual axiom you could adhere to within yourself. You should live life that way, that everybody deserves what they have. And if you hold that to be your rock, right, you're the foundation for what you do, that is what will make you do the right things, because it's all about accountability, responsibility. You will do the right things to earn the things that you want, and you will deserve them. That is what will make you worthy of love, capable, right? Capable and deserving and able of forming loving relationships, which is what heals all wounds. So that's what they do. Their mentality creates all of these infuriating things. And one key thing to mention about the people who appear every week on This Week in Tyranny, these men from the Frankfurt School, they all lived very sad lives and met sad ends. They died in accidents, sudden heart attacks. You know, it really went down this way. And they talked about all these things about capitalism being a form of sexual repression, and it's, you know, very Freudian. And it's clear again that they had no love in their life. And their mentality, their lifestyle, you see that the universe reflected to them what they put out into the world. They met these tragic ends, and they did fade into obscurity. Very sad lives with sad, tragic ends. When you look today at these people today, Look at Bill Gates. Look at Yuval Harari. Keep that in mind. These are not, you shouldn't see them as equals, right? This isn't somebody like you that you are trying to battle with and they're holding you down. They're very sad, broken, grown-up version of boys, and they're incapable of these loving relationships. So the answer is not to love them or feel empathy for them, but for you should feel something, not for them, because they're gone. The best thing you can do for them is to remove them as quickly as possible, to limit the suffering that they reflect into the world, right? Because they're like artists, so their art is going to reflect their spirit. And that's why you're seeing the world reflect what they are on the inside. The best thing you can do is take them out as quickly as possible. But within yourself, when you think about this game as a grand story, don't invest too much of your spirit into a fusion with them as your enemy. They don't deserve your hatred. They don't really deserve you getting angry. I don't get angry for them. I don't view them as equals. I feel bad for them. I pity them. They're little empty shells. I'm angry because I don't want women and children to suffer. I want the good in life to win. But remember, these are empty sacks of nothing, of garbage, and not even like manure that something can grow out of. They're like plastic and like nuclear waste. The best thing to do is really to leave them alone. So I didn't mean to end my show with that, but I think it's fitting to end it with that message, that this is really your world, not theirs, and it's really not as much of a big, insurmountable, great machine, this huge titan, that we will go like Braveheart with our sword up in the air and defeat them. It's more so like fighting a diseased mass, a sack of nothing that just consumes and consumes. So don't give them your energy. Give your energy to people who deserve that energy, and we'll start building back. We build up high enough that the sacks of nothingness will be out of sight and out of mind. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
Tournament, the chosen few shall be triumphant and the devil will be decapitated, so you can keep your ducats and your dresses. I won't be emasculated in this world of scientific madness. Scientific madness. My status is the baddest.